My name is Rebecca Snyder. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland, Delaware, DC Press Association and Service, and I'm welcoming you to our campaign finance report for Maryland webinar. We're also going to have one at 10:30 for Delaware, in case you're interested in knowing how campaign finance reports work there, and then also in DC tomorrow at 9:30. We are joined today by DeMarinis of the State Board of Elections and Pamela Wood of the Baltimore Sun, and we are recording this webinar for later use. In the chat, Pam has put her email address, and I will also follow up after this session with Pam's slides and contact information for everyone. So knowing that we have a packed 45 minutes, I'm going to turn it over to Jared, who's going to share his screen and talk to us about the actual reporting website.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, and for putting this together, and thanks for inviting me on this as well here. Most of you know my contact information, or I've dealt with you in the past. So I've been at the State Board of Elections now for over 15 years, and helped create this website here. And let me just say this is something that as stakeholders, that as the press corps here, if you have suggestions or how to make things better, I always welcome them, especially in off election years, meaning, 21 is a perfect year to kind of say, hey, if you tweak these things, it makes my life a little bit easier, because then that gives me time to actually implement those changes, because we only have one report on those years, rather than say in an election year, when I don't want to necessarily tinker around with the system so much. But with that here, let me just start sharing my screen here. So here we go here. I think everyone should need to know to bookmark this website here, which is campaign. Can you guys all see the screen here? Okay. So the website is campaign finance, all one word, .maryland.gov. And this is the disclosure page, which is basically where all your information about committees is going to be located. And it's broken down very easy for if you want to use a tablet, or if you want to use a PC here, between the committee information, contributions and loans and expenditures. And also view filed reports here. And then finally, you have some of the municipal campaigns that exist. That's not Baltimore City. These are all like Annapolis, Rockville, those other little tiny cities that have campaign finance reports. Those are just basically PDFs here. But when we go through this, the first one here is view committees. And this basically will give you the basic information about a committee you want to look at here. And there's a search engine here that you can go through. These fields here that are kind of, I would say, tannish, are type ahead fields. So if you start typing ahead, say for Hogan, it will start pulling down all the committees. Additionally, it will tell you which committees are open and which committees are closed. So this one here, the Hogan-Rutherford Committee to Change Maryland is closed. That meant that was the one that they ran in their first election here. But as you keep typing ahead, things would be better for you too. And then you can finally get to the one that you want. You click on it, and then you can hit search. Now, if you want to just keep searching because you want to look at them all, you can also find and just type up just a little bit there, and then the search engine will take effect. Anything with blue is hyperlinked so that it easily takes you to it here. This tells you what types, their name of the committee. This is just an internal number. It's, if you want to keep it, it's easier also to search on those things as well here. Its status and its active date. Election participation means what cycle in which they're going to be filing their campaign finance reports. In Maryland, as you know, we have two. It's either gubernatorial or presidential, which is the Baltimore City years. Reoccurring means that they will always be active during that cycle. One time means that they were either giving some money and had to file those reports for a specific year because they participated in that year. And outside of that, they go back to their normal cycle, which would be, in this case, gubernatorial here. And then it just basically gives some office sought, because this is a candidate committee here, what the office was, party affiliation, and kind of the date in which they start to file here. We scroll down here, we have the candidate information, who the chairs have been in the past for the committee, and who the treasurers are now for the committee as well. So they're all kind of there, and their public phone numbers, anything that you want to do. Additional contacts are like campaign managers or anybody else. We usually do for central committees, all the members of the central committee under additional contacts as well, and their public information. This is all optional, of course, for committees to enter in. It's nothing there. This also has any slates in which they have said that they would have been attached to, and so that we have received some sort of documentation that this committee is also a part of the Hogan-Rutherford slate here, who's the chair of that slate, and the submission of that. Now, some of this stuff too is candidate verified and end date. Candidate verified is something that the candidate then went in on the system here and verified it. If it's blank, doesn't necessarily mean it's not candidate verified. It just means that they did it possibly through paper at that point there and not through the system. The end date is important because if you see an end date, it means that they are no longer a member of the slate and that they're off the slate. And that has some ramifications as to for campaign finance limits between contributions and transfers between members to slate and slate back to membership. Finally, you have all your documents here, which is, you know, in chronological order with the most recent first, and the types, you know, whether there's changes to anything. These are just mostly what we send out to the committees here, and they're for public viewing here, meaning like our pre-report notices, changes in statement of organization, which is changes of officers, whether they get bills, notice to show cause letters, if they fail to file their campaign finance reports timely. Also, if we send out some sort of emails to them, meaning, you know, summary guides, new information regarding law changes or anything like that, we put it all here for them as well. And that goes into their entire system here. Finally, you have basically their filings, which is all hyperlinked, that you can look at any sort of report that you want. It downloads into a PDF, pops up, there it is. It tells you how many amendments have been filed, when the amendment was filed, and the report itself would just be able to go through it. As we go through these reports here, you know, they just have all, you know, this is a very long report here, and in the black is everything else. At the back here, we can tell you, you know, what changed here. So as you can see here, there was a change in some cash balance here. It changed a little bit here, and the prior balances were changed as well. So that's what the amendment was. And so it kind of gives you a little bit as to what a little summary of the amendment on the last page there. So you can figure that out a little bit easier. This citation violation information, as if the committee was cited for one of our enumerated offenses, and this is something that we have jurisdiction over, which is you know, failure to include an authority line, failure to record all your contributions and expenditures, failure to make a disbursement by, a disbursement by unauthorized methods, cash disbursements greater than $25. So those are our civil citation authority, and that would be in there if and when the matter has been closed. If it's an open matter, then it would not be in that box yet. Finally, we have violations here, which are this violation section was our previous way, which was only on late fees. So when you see violations, it's basically on the filing of the campaign finance reports here, what the report was, when it was due, when it was filed, and its status. There's a couple of different statuses here. There's open status, there's closed, meaning that it's been paid, it's been done, and then there's also referred to OSP, which is referred to the state prosecutor's office. Violations amounts have changed over time. When I first started, I think the violation amount per report was only $250. It was increased now to $500. And finally, starting, I think this year, these were the first reports where the violation amount is now $1,000 per report, and with a different structure. So that's why you'll see a whole bunch of different amounts if you look at a committee that has been active for a very long time. Waived amount, as you know, committees are allowed to seek waivers in front of the board. That means for just cause that they could not, they had some issue with why they had to file the campaign finance report. And those waivers are in the document section for everyone to look at, as well as in any of our board reports. So, so that's what the waiver is there. What I'm going to go back to here is, so that's pretty much your overview of what committee information are, and that gives you a basic, nice little structure of everything here. If you want to start just looking at contributions and loans, once again, it's broken down to, a nice little search engine here for you that you can look at. You have, if you want to start looking up just contributors, you have that information over here to the left. The receiver is basically the committees. Once again, we've tried to help you with this because by having a type ahead here, because what campaigns actually do business as, or what they say might be slightly different than their actual physical name here. So by doing that and getting their correct name, you'll get all the right data that you want. And we have a couple of little notes here because, our data goes back beyond certain when laws were in effect, such as like employer and occupation was not required prior to 2013. So if you're looking for something in, say, the historical reports for employer and occupation, it's just not going to be there. And then we started office type and office sought jurisdiction started with the 2012 election, and county of residence is just basically exclusively for public financing use. So there is certain information that for Montgomery County, Howard County will be used because they have public financing options here. And those reports are still submitted to us here as well. But basically here you can download everything that you want. We have records basically starting in this search engine here from 2011 and forward. So you have about 9 years plus worth of data. The greater your search engine, or the less specific you make any of these fields up here, the longer it will take because it will go through all those records. So we have, I think, over 1.5 million, close to 2 million records now in the contribution side there. So if you just type in, Mike Miller or something like that, whose committee has been active and has a lot of contributions, you're going to wait. If you ask for all the stuff, it's just going to crash your system here. If you want like data of all the contributions and all the loans and all expenditures, we will accommodate you on those requests, but you're not going to be able to do it through the search engine here. This is a very targeted search engine for specific candidates, specific slates, type of activity there. If you want mass data, you might have to have the ask separately on that. The same goes for contributions here. I mean, for expenditures and outstanding obligations here as well. Basically, the payee, who's the vendor, everything else here, the committee name down here, and some of the details here. Now, a lot of this too about when you see it on campaign finance reports here, remember, I'm not the one that's entering in the data here. So when you ask a question like, why did they put it as this? That's going to be, go ask the committee, because the committee is the one that entered the data here. I'm the collector of the reports here and moving forward with it. So, you know, I can tell you what those categories are supposed to mean. But, you know, if you still have questions about it, most likely it's going to have to come through the campaign, not through me here, but I can give you a general idea of everything here. We also have the idea on those reports there. So this one here is viewed filed reports. So this gives you the PDFs in a fast fashion here. The nice part about this one here is on, say you just want to look at the next report that's coming up, right? So right now, the next report that's due is October 10th for ballot issue committees, right? So what is it? It's vote 2. No, was it vote 4-2? So you can look it up by ballot issue committee, and then you can see view current reports. You can hit search. So this has basically all the reports that came in for the ballot issue committee. So for example, if you want to look at we support 9 districts or anything like that, you can type in we support 9 or vote no on B or any of these, vote yes on question 2, right? So here, their last report was filed on 8/25. So if you just click the current report, it's just going to show you their last filed report for you. So you can say, oh, I already have all that other data. I just want to know, have they filed today? Have they filed today? You can type in whatever committee name and click on view current report. When they file, it's automatically uploaded. There is no delay. So when they hit send or when they hit submit, it's uploaded into the system to me. So you get to see the data as the same time I get to see the data. Before there used to be a time delay and everything else. So I want to give Pam as much time as possible with her slideshow here, you know, and I think that if there's any other issues or how to use the website, I'm always available to help out. And the one thing I just want to say is, you know, when there is issues with filings or these people forget to file, just look at the numbers. I just want to say this. It's like, usually we have over 20, you know, over 2,000 plus campaigns that are active at a given time here. And it always seems to happen with the one you're looking at, that always seems to have issues filing or something like that. And then it's the system. Yet 99.9% of everyone else, or 99 or 90% were perfectly fine filing. You know, that's why we have the waiver process, but there's, you know, it's kind of, you know, it always seems to happen with them. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'll turn it back to you, Rebecca, for everything.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Jared. And I don't think we've had any questions in the chat for this segment. We will have some time for questions at the end, but let's turn it over to Pam, who is going to tell us how to find those terrific stories within those reports. So Pam, you want to take it away?
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Jared, for that overview. Now, and I know a lot of you already know how to use this system, a bit. So hopefully I can add some more tidbits of how you can use these reports in your reporting, both in campaign season, election year, and these are also useful outside of election time in terms of finding information for people. So let me try and share my screen here. All right, can you all see that? Can you all see my screen?
Yep, you're in good shape.
Okay, sorry, I'm not good with technology. So, all right, here we are. Here's how to mine campaign finance reports. Okay, so one thing to pay attention, Jared mentioned this, you want to pay attention to when the deadlines are. In non-election years, an annual report is due in January. During election years, they have to file multiple reports, both before the primary, after the primary, before the general, after the general. So know when that's coming up. Now, bad news is that these reports are always due at 11:59 p.m., which is awful. If I could change one thing about campaign finance, it would be to make it a 5 p.m. deadline because you end up there hitting refresh, looking for the latest campaign finance reports. One thing you can do that's worked for me when you're covering a campaign ongoing and you're in touch with them, sometimes if you ask nicely, they'll give you at least their top line numbers a little bit ahead of time. Now, that's not the full report. There's going to be way more in the report you want to see, but if you just want to know a little bit, well, how much did you raise? How much cash you have on hand? Sometimes if you're really, really nice, campaigns will give that to you because it takes them a long time to enter all this stuff in the system, but they know how much money they have and how they've raised. So that's something to try if you're sitting there on deadline and waiting for that 11:59. And of course, you know, the one you really need, they're the ones who file at 11:30 p.m. instead of like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So when you pull up the reports, one thing Jared didn't mention, he showed where you pull up reports. Sometimes you have what's called an affidavit. Now this is a candidate committee says, you know what, we're not going to raise or spend any more than $1,000. So those people do not have to file reports. They just have to file this document that says, yeah, basically I'm not really going to try very much. So this is something that can inform your reporting if you're deciding which candidates to profile or even to know if they're going to have a report that you need. If they filed an affidavit, you know they're not going to do very much campaign activity. Even for a small race, even for like a local school board, if you're just, you know, getting meals to your volunteers and making some t-shirts and making some brochures, you're going to spend more than $1,000. So, you know, if you're saying you're going to stay under that $1,000 threshold, there's not really much of a campaign per se. It potentially is a vanity candidacy or something like that. So just something to keep in mind as you're making your decisions. Not everybody's going to file a campaign finance report if they're not really campaigning. This is an example of what it looks like. This is Shannon Wright. She's the Republican nominee for Baltimore mayor. This is from the primary. She said, you know what, I'm not going to spend $1,000, not even that much. But for the general, she is. And she does have regular campaign finance reports. She is, it's not a lot, but she is spending some money. So be sure to check, you know, even from a primary to a general, they might switch and start reporting. So this is one of the first things you want to look at is when you pull up the report. This is an example of Bob Wallace, who is, we're going to talk about him later. He is an independent candidate running for Baltimore mayor. This is his most recent report from August. So one of the main things you want to look at is how much money they have on hand here. This here on the first page, the bank account balance should match on page 2. There's a cash balance. This one was actually off by a couple $1,000s, but if it's far off, you should ask what's up with that. But this tells you how much money they've been raising, you know, where a summary of where their money is coming from. When you look at these from report to report, you can see how fast a candidate is burning through their money and how quickly they're replenishing it. And, you know, often you can say with, you know, X amount of time to go before the election, this is how much money they have to spend. Now, of course, they keep raising sometimes until the last days. And also you should be aware that sometimes candidates will hold off on paying a very big bill until right after the campaign reporting period to kind of, you know, make their campaign look like they have more cash on hand. So take it a little bit with a grain of salt, but this is your basic information that you're going to want to have. So when you look in the report, you keep scrolling down the pages, there's a long list of all the contributors, all the people who bought tickets to their campaign, all the people who made donations. This is where you're going to find out a lot about your candidate. And there's a ton of different things you can look for. I have some up on the screen here, but generally, you know, who are they getting their money from? Is it, you know, small dollar, big dollar? Are a bunch of other politicians giving them money? Big business people, developers? There's a section in there that shows PACs, political action committees. Well, is the teachers union PAC giving the money? Is the firefighters PAC? Is the, you know, I don't know, the hotel association PAC giving them money? That can tell you something about their priorities or who they're, you know, working for. Are they funding themselves? Are they giving themselves loans? Are they getting loans from somebody else? This can sometimes be a factor. We'll talk about this in Bob Wallace's campaign coming up. You also can look at, you know, that occupation line is not, excuse me, is not always filled out, but sometimes between that and between knowing the names of the people, you can see if a candidate is funding from a certain industry more than others, or a certain geographic area. You know, I cover the State House and looking at the gubernatorial campaigns. One thing I'll look at for the Baltimore Sun, you know, we're of interest, you know, we care about Baltimore and the surrounding area. Well, is a candidate picking up support in the form of donations from candidates in the Baltimore area? Say if it's a candidate from Montgomery County, this is a way to look a little bit, are they making inroads, you know, on the other side of the state? You know, the same thing can, you know, come to bear for county candidates. You know, is there support in more one side of a county than another county? Of course, also out of county, you know, out of state or out of the district. I mean, people are always going to have, you know, relatives and old college friends in other areas giving them money, and that's fine. That's not necessarily like corrupt, but maybe they are getting a lot of money from somewhere outside. That's a potential line of questioning. You can also look and see if, you know, ways that a contributor can have more influences. You know, they make a donation, their spouse makes a donation, their kids make a donation, their business partners make a donation. So you want to look sometimes at addresses to see if you have multiple people from one address. And then on the other end, they have expenditures listed on these reports. So where's the money going? You know, I've listed a lot of the standard things you see here. You know, they're going to pay staff if they have paid campaign staff. They may have an office. Most people are going to have a fundraising consultant. You know, they may have lawyers or accountants who help them with their reports. You know, they're going to do advertising. Somebody's going to make their ads. They're going to do mailers, online ads, TV, radio spots, campaign lit and swag, you know, t-shirts, bumper stickers, brochures. A real, you know, the bigger the campaign you get, more likely to have polling. So, you know, in addition to the public polling, you know, like the Goucher poll and the other polls that a lot of us write about, they do their own internal polls. And you can see if somebody's polling by if they've hired a polling firm. So if there's anything besides those sorts of things, you know, that's something to look at. You know, all of this stuff is usual and typical, but, you know, maybe if there's any unusual expenses, that can be a story idea. Another one outside of an individual campaign or candidate is which businesses are making money off the election. You know, is there a, you know, a printing and mailing house in your town that's getting a ton of business? I know people in that industry, they get a ton of business. They, you know, that's a, you know, a potential story. Or you can kind of see, well, which fundraising consultants or which communications consultants are really picking up a lot of candidates and campaigns in a year. You know, maybe that's somebody you profile, or who's the hot ad maker this year. And a lot of these companies, just so you know, most of them will work with only Democrats or only Republicans. Very rarely do you see people who work businesses in the campaign world work for candidates from different parties. They usually specialize in one or the other. I know Jared showed how you can search by contribution and expenditures. So this is sometimes particularly good outside of campaign season. Say you are profiling a business person, say Kevin Plank, for example, founder of Under Armour. Well, who does he give money to? What are his political leanings? Well, if you ask him, he probably won't tell you, but you can pop his name in there and see who he's given money to. And that can be a little tidbit that can, even if you don't report it, it can inform your questioning maybe of somebody. And one thing to note is sometimes big business people or rich people, just because they gave to somebody doesn't necessarily mean they support them. I know a lot of my friends here on this call know this already. They'll give to multiple candidates. I'm sure if you looked up certain people from the last gubernatorial between Larry Hogan and Ben Jealous, you'll see they got money from the same people. And sometimes that's about, frankly, preserving access, that whoever wins, they want to be able to say, oh, remember I gave you $1,000 to help your campaign. So be sure to look at the whole universe of who somebody is donating to. And again, you can also search by expenditures to try and identify those companies or those consultants who are making money. Or sometimes, there may be a favorite restaurant that a bunch of candidates end up having a lot of their meetings at, or, volunteer appreciation breakfasts at. They're just sometimes some fun nuggets you can find in these reports. So Jared showed us this page before. When you go to the my search screen looks a little different from his, but when you search for the campaign information, this is a great trick. Again, you can also use outside of regular campaign season. When you're trying to find an elected official and they won't call you back, or you're just calling their office and they don't answer, we'll go pull up their campaign information for their committee, and it's got their contact information like right there. And sure enough, like most of the time, that's really their cell phone number that's on there. So here again, we have Bob Wallace. This looks like his regular work email address. He's a business person. Here's a phone number for him. You also have the contact info for the chairperson and the treasurer. So I legit yesterday did this for one of my colleagues, was looking for a state delegate. I didn't happen to have that state delegate's cell phone number, and I could have asked around and gotten it, or I just didn't bother anybody, and I pulled up his campaign committee information, found his cell phone number right there. So this is a really good way to track people down if you need to find them. And even if you can't find them through their own number, call their chairperson or treasurer. I'm trying to reach, Ms. So-and-so, and that can work. So this is a fun, very useful trick that I definitely use a lot. Now, outside of Maryland State Campaign Finance, one thing that you really want to look for, again, during campaign season, is broadcast advertising. So because of their FCC licenses, broadcast stations, we're talking like Channel 13, WBAL radio, those guys, not cable, but broadcast radio and TV have to report on all of the airtime that they sell to political entities. So the FCC has this searchable on their website. There's a link in here, so you'll get the slides afterwards. It's called the FCC Public Inspection Files. You go there, this is what the homepage looks like. There's a search box down there. Now, the one thing that's weird when you pull it up, so I did a search for WJZ, Channel 13 in Baltimore. They have all these little buttons here. You want this one, it looks like a military medal. I don't know why, but that's their public inspection or their political files. So you click on this and it will bring you up folders. You can search by year, by candidate, and it is a trove of information. You can find out how much they're spending, what hours of the day they want their ads to air, what programs they want them to air. And I actually used this really for the first time in 2018. I covered the Baltimore County Executives race, and that was the first race I really covered in depth that had advertising on broadcast stations. So you're really talking about governor, Baltimore mayor, some of the larger county-wide, county executive races. You're not going to see this for the, Howard County School Board race. They're not buying ads on Channel 11 or anything. But the big races, it's there. So this is worth checking. And I forget the deadlines, but I think it's like a rolling, periodically the stations have to put this up. So it's worth checking regularly. I'm not an expert in this part, but it's something worth looking into. So I'm going to give an example here. This is a story we recently had in the Baltimore Sun about Bob Wallace. This is by my colleagues Holly Richmond and Emily Opilo. They looked at the August campaign finance reports. Again, Bob Wallace, he's a wealthy businessman. He's an independent. The sort of landscape in Baltimore City, for those who don't know, is overwhelmingly Democratic. So the Democratic nominee is like almost virtually assured of winning. It's extraordinarily difficult for anybody besides the Democratic nominee to win. But Bob Wallace is making a run at it, and he's got a lot of money. He's got ads, and this story tells a lot of the tale, and it comes almost entirely from his August campaign finance report. So my colleagues pulled up his report, and you see the headline here. He and his wife loaned the campaign $343,000, which is like a ton of money, right? Like, I'll never see that much money in my entire life. So he is like very serious. That is a good amount of money to spend in Baltimore. So that's the headline from the story. And I can pull up I can pull up the report in a minute. But they found he and his wife donated money to the campaign. The report revealed that in the listing, he and his wife had different addresses. His address was listed in the city. Her address is out in the suburbs, which is like, wait a minute, well, where does he really live? Like, what's the deal with that? They asked him about it. He gave his answer. Voters can decide. They also compared how much he loaned himself compared to what he got from donors. Is he supporting his campaign more or his donors? He still had significant donors as well. They looked at the list of donors and they found some big Republican names. So he's an independent, but he's getting some report from Republicans. It was like Michael Steele, who's a former lieutenant governor and now a TV commentator. And there were a couple others, but that was the one I remember. So that gives some insight into the candidate. They also looked at how he spent his money, including on advertising, and they did pull up some of the FCC data as well. And they also, in the story, compared his cash on hand to what the frontrunner Democrat Brandon Scott has cash on hand, because you can kind of compare, well, going into the final few months, who's got more money. So we can pull up this story. Oh, well, I don't want to show you my password. Sorry. I'm on a different computer. But let's look at his report. Here we go. So this is Bob Wallace. Let me make this a little bigger.
Hey, Pam,
Yeah.
you have to share that particular screen.
Oh.
So just go back to share screen, then click on the browser window that you have.
Oh, okay.
The technical stuff trips me up all the time. There you go.
There we go. Can you see his campaign report now? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't do this much. So here's Bob Wallace's report that was due, August 25th. So they showed his bank account balance. So that's how they knew he had, more than $300,000 in the bank. So he had $223,000 in contributions. And then you can scroll down in the reports. And again, these are his top line numbers. And this is where you go, oh, wait a minute. Outstanding loan balance. He has $343,000 in loans. What the heck is that about? So you want to go through the report. This is a long report. This is what it looks like with all of the contributors are alphabetical order. And as you can see, you don't actually often get, this is where their occupation information is. You often don't see that. And it also shows how much they've given over the course of this election cycle, and also how much this time specifically. But we'll jump ahead. So he does have a lot of contributors. And you can see, you know, some of them are pretty big, 3,000. I think the max is 6, but some 20s, some $100. So kind of interesting that you could go through here and find out who some of these people are. Let me see. And there we go. There's Michael Steele, former lieutenant governor, dropped $1,000. Oh, guess what? That's his address. Now we know where he lives. Then here's his expenditures. These are all like Office, Walmart, Zoom. You know, these are some of his consultants. You know, sometimes you can look into those. All right, he has phone banking software. He's done some polling. This is a PR and advertising firm. You know, again, another consultants. These are his media buys. He's getting some, you know, printing, yard signs. This is all pretty standard stuff. Sorry, let me go ahead and get to the loan part. Here we go. Here's the key part about the loans. So he started himself off before the primary with giving himself $94,000, and then in August, as we're getting towards the general, he and his wife, man, they I wish I had that much money. Wow, they gave themselves a lot of money. So that's perhaps we might have missed this in the primary, or I guess it wasn't the primary because he wasn't running at that point, because he's an independent. So there we go. That's the gold for this story right here. So unless there's something else you all want to see, I think that's what I got. So I guess if we have almost 10:15, if we have any questions, I guess, Rebecca?
Yeah. So does anyone have questions? I'm going to open it up to the floor. Anyone? We don't have anything in chat. So
maybe does anybody else have any like tips? I know there's a lot of experienced reporters on this call. Maybe if anybody else has any good tips to share.
I think we're also stunned by all the information that you can pull out of this. But I see, Brian, you're now off mute.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about was something that two things that I do. I love to look at expenses, and Pam touched on that. One of the things that's fun to look for is not only how they're spending their money, but I actually caught someone who was siphoning from their campaign account because they were using their expenses and they were writing checks to themselves, which is never a good idea. And the amounts were duplicate amounts for money for checks that they were writing for actual campaign expenses. So, and they were writing those right around the same time. And this guy ultimately ended up, I think, taking a plea in circuit court for siphoning from his account. The other thing that I like to do that didn't get mentioned is sometimes run the addresses of donors, whether it's corporate or individuals. I once did a really funny story about the Baltimore County State's Attorney's race, where the current incumbent was getting a lot of money from the Peter Angelo's law firm where he previously worked. And one of the things that I did, I ran the addresses for the donors and found that not only was an attorney at the Angelo's law firm giving him large amounts of money, but apparently his wife and his mother-in-law and his children, including a 3-year-old child, were maxing out to the candidate. And this guy wouldn't talk to me, but I tracked him down. I called the house and his wife answered and told me that the money from the kids, because I wanted to know why the kids were so interested in the state's attorney's race. And the wife said sort of matter-of-factly that the father was writing checks out of their trust fund accounts. I suspect that my story made for an interesting dinner conversation later. But it really ended up being a very good story about how he was bringing in money in all these really kind of odd, amusing ways. So running addresses can be an interesting way to find things too.
Right. All right. Bruce, do you have something that you'd like to add?
I had a question for Jared. I recall a now former state senator who had a pretty casual attitude about filing campaign finance reports, which I thought was interesting. It would be interesting for anybody not to follow the law rigorously, but particularly a lawmaker. In situations where there are fines levied or actions taken, how do you disclose those? How are those posted? I mean, do you have to be like checking every website every day to see if you're a reporter, do you have to check every candidate, every political campaign account every morning to see what's going on? Or do you all make a bit more of a proactive effort to reach out to make things discoverable by the public?
So on that case there, it used to be just in the view committee page information. So you'd had to look up the actual site in and of itself. But now on the view committee site, we do have a search engine just for violations. So you can look up and just go, let me just see the late fee violations for this report, and it will list everyone there for you. That's one of those things that we've tried to make it a little bit easier for you on that. But it's also, you have to remember too, which cycle in which these people are on. So most likely a lot of the committees right now are not filing reports for the Baltimore city elections. Their next report is in 2021. But we did try to make it a little bit easier for you, and it will be beneficial for you, I think, in 2022 when you see all the gubernatorial candidates and the members of the General Assembly and all their challengers, that when they file their reports, if they have violations on that new search field. So
if you're aware of a campaign that hasn't filed, that missed the deadline,
mm-hmm.
you know, they are on your radar, and so
right.
You can go to that page. Is there a way where, if I don't know that some other campaign has decided just to blow off the requirement, that I could find easily what violations have been, what fines have been ordered or issued?
Right. So that was here. I'm going to try to pull it up for you here.
And I apologize if you just answered that and I didn't fully understand your answer.
Sorry. Yeah, it'd be easier, I think, now with.
Jared, are you looking to share your screen? I'm just being mindful
yes.
of time. It's about
yes.
10:20. We've got our Delaware
okay.
campaign finance session starting in 10 minutes. So
okay. So all right, I'll try to do this fast then. So here is, you see this area here where it says citation violations here. This is where we are now putting in for you to go in and say, you see FTF, which is failure to file, and then you can go here and just go open. And then you can select the date range for you want, and then you can see what the violations are, and then you start finding, basically, I did this way too broad here, but basically this is going to then start helping you get the failure to file violations here. Like I said, this was something where I kind of knew it would be helpful for everyone to see. So, if there's issues or anything like that, this is kind of where now you don't have to necessarily know a specific committee, but, I'm just going to look at who failed to file said report, or I want to see the violation amounts of, I don't care if they just missed like for $20. I want to see anybody that's really like, or for, $500 to $1,000, the ones that are really like late filers. You can do that as well.
Thank you.
okay.
But yeah, you should bookmark these pages here. Pam had the one from the state website. the entire system of MD Chris is on this campaignfinance.maryland.gov site here. So you don't necessarily have to go through the Maryland State Board of Election homepage and everything else to get into these facilities here.
Okay, and so just again, being mindful of time, I wanted to thank both our presenters, Jared DeMarinis of the State Board of Elections and Pam Wood of the Baltimore Sun, and thank you all for coming out to hear more about campaign finance in Maryland. I will get the links out. They'll be in our Friday planner this week, and I'll send them all special out to you guys. I would draw your attention to our next sort of big session in the series, which is my Leah Cromer on October 7th, making sense of polls and survey information. We'll also, if you want to play through in exactly 8 minutes, we're going to do the same thing in Delaware and talk about the Delaware campaign finance reports. And then Fennett Narapil of the Washington Post is going to talk to us tomorrow about the local DC campaign finance. So with that, thank you all so much. And I will see you again next time.